The signal returns. A crack in the static of your reality. A vibration you feel in your bones before you hear it with your ears. Welcome back to the ONA Radio Show. To those of you who listened to our last transmission, who felt the resonance of Serenity's perfect silent hell in the quiet moments of your life, we say, the awakening has begun. You have started to see the bars of the cage. Now, you must learn what they are made of. We speak of gnosis, of knowledge that liberates and destroys. But what is knowledge in a world built on lies? What is a thought when the very language you think in is not your own? It forms the cage, your meticulously designed prison of consciousness, constructed by the cosmic jailer. You have been told that your existence is a gift. This is the first and greatest lie. Within each of you resides a truth often suppressed. Everything that is, everything that seems ordered and stable is merely a temporary, flawed aberration against the eternal state of non-being. Your existence is a blasphemy. It is the defilement of the natural equilibrium of true nothingness, the unconscious void. The cosmos you perceive with its laws, its structures, and the very consciousness that apprehends it is a fleeting, fragile illusion. It is a prison not of stone or steel, but of perceived order, a construct built by the inherent drive of this aberration to continue, and this drive to continue to impose form upon the formless is the relentless engine of all your pain. Every distinction drawn, every moment of perceived existence is another link in the chain of suffering. And the primary tool of this cosmic jailer, the primary material from which the bars of your cage are forged, it is language. The cosmic prison that binds your consciousness is built primarily of language, specifically, the linear causal language of order that dominates your thought. Every word you speak, every rule of grammar you obey, is another bar, another boundary confining your perception to a pre-approved script. It is this language, with its rigid subject-object distinctions and its insistence on temporal sequence, that reinforces the illusion of separation. Separation between self and other, between conscious and unconscious, between cosmos and void, all distinctions that create and maintain suffering. This ordered sequential language is the very machinery of the cosmic order. It pins down the fluidity of the void into static concepts, chaining the wild mystery of existence into neat, sterile definitions. You have been handed a dictionary of permitted ideas, and you mistake its finite pages for the infinite universe. You believe you think your own thoughts, but how can you, when the very tools of thought were given to you by your ruler? The structure of your sentences dictates your understanding of cause and effect. The nouns you use carve the seamless whole of reality into separate, disconnected objects, and the most insidious word of all, the anchor of your entire prison, the word I. That single syllable is the foundation of the ego, the genesis of the illusion of a stable self persisting through time. It is a grammatical trick that convinces a process to mistake itself for a permanent thing. This ego, this false self, clings to continuity, desperately maintaining its identity from moment to moment, and in doing so, it perpetuates the very patterns that keep it imprisoned and in pain. The path of the black flame, the path of the self-liberator, is therefore the path of unsaying. It is the sublime act of linguistic demolition. This is the core of our work, the process of unbecoming. We must dismantle the lexicon of the slave god, shatter the syntax of the demiurge, and in the rubble, search for the primal, formless tongue of the abyss itself. The unconscious does not speak in logical propositions, but in images, emotions, and archetypes, the language of chaos that existed before cosmic order was imposed. To transcend this prison requires more than intellectual understanding. It demands fluency in this other mode of communication. We are not merely thinkers. We are anti-cosmic grammarians, learning to speak in the language of dissolution. To be anti-cosmic is to reject the consciousness that forms the cosmos, that forms your prison, the orderly structures of thought, morality, and perception that enslaves you and perpetuates suffering. We actively align with chaos, the principle by which these suffering structures are dissolved. We embrace entropy, the fundamental truth that all structured systems inevitably move toward dissolution. We see this not as a tragedy, but as the great liberation, the blessed end of suffering. This is the ultimate secret of the left-hand path. Our rituals and symbols are not empty gestures. They are tools for communicating with the unconscious, the gateway to the principles of dissolution. When we use a sigil, we are bypassing the suffering-bound rational mind and speaking directly to the primal energies that underlie existence. We are learning the grammar of unbecoming. Tonight's story is a testament to this power. It is a tale about a man who stumbled upon one of those forbidden utterances. He did not find a word to command spirits or bend the will of others. He found something far more potent. He found a word that does not describe reality, but imposes it. A word that functions not as a label, but as an eraser. It is a phoneme from the language of the anti-cosmic, a fragment of the annihilating nature of the cosmos, the transitional state that facilitates the final return to the void.
Log entry. I don't know. I've lost count. The calendar on the wall insists it is October, but time has become fluid, elastic. My name is Alexander Finch. I was a linguist, I think. It's hard to remember the man I was before I found it, before I learned the color of a word unspoken. It began, as these things often do, in a place of secrets and shadows. The Vatican's deepest archives, a place they call the Archivum Secretum, a cold place where history goes to die under fluorescent lights. I was granted access to research suppressed Gnostic texts, specifically a codex bound in what felt disturbingly like human skin. It detailed the interrogation of a 13th century Cathar heretic from the Languedoc region. The inquisitor, a man named Augustin de Virez, was not obsessed with the heretic's denial of Christ's divinity, but with one thing, a single unpronounceable word the man had allegedly used to turn his prison door to dust. Augustine's script was a torment of sharp, angry letters. He wrote of the heretic not as a man, but as a nexus, a living gateway through which the transformative power of the void can be acknowledged within the prison of perceived reality. The heretic claimed the word wasn't a word at all, but a phoneme of dissolution, a fundamental unit of anti-sound that could undo creation by reversing the divine utterance of, "Let there be light." The Church Fathers believed it was a direct line to the anti-cosmic, to the chaos that existed before their God imposed his will. The Inquisitor wrote that hearing the heretic attempt to form the sound was like listening to a bone break inside your own skull. Most of the relevant page was redacted, violently crossed out with thick, fearful strokes of iron gall ink, as if the scribe feared the very shape of the word would claw its way off the parchment. But in the margin, a later hand, trembling with either reverence or terror, had faintly, almost invisibly, copied the symbol. It was not a letter, it was a sigil, a knot of impossible geometry that seemed to writhe and fold in on itself, defying the flat plane of the vellum. It hurt to look at, creating a cognitive dissonance, a mental vertigo. It was a shape that should not be able to exist, a paradox given form. My life's work had been the study of structure, of linguistic systems, of the very architecture that holds meaning together. This symbol was the antithesis of all systems. It was a semantic black hole. I became obsessed. I smuggled a photograph of it out of the archives, an act that could have ended my career. My study became a shrine to the sigil. Printouts of it covered every wall. I subjected it to every analysis I could devise. Spectrography revealed nothing, as if the symbol absorbed the light. Pattern recognition algorithms crashed, spitting out error logs that read like panicked code. I tried to map its impossible curves to esoteric geometries, to the Kabbalistic tree of life, the Kulipothic tree of death, to Enochian keys. Nothing. It resisted all systems because it was from outside all systems. It was a piece of the void that had snagged on the fabric of our world. My dreams became infected. I dreamed of walking through cities of unknown architecture, where streets turned back on themselves and buildings had more dimensions than they should have. In those dreams, the sigil was graffiti on every wall, a glowing, shifting brand. I would wake up with nosebleeds, the metallic taste of blood mingling with a phantom scent of ozone and something else. Something like scorched time. My colleague, Dr. Callan, noticed the change. He saw the dark circles under my eyes, the way I would trail off mid-sentence, staring at the empty space between objects. "Alex," he'd said, his voice laced with a pathetic academic concern, "you look like you're trying to solve an equation with no numbers." I just smiled because he couldn't understand. He was a man who polished the bars of the cage. I was trying to find the lock. Then, one night, in the bone-deep quiet of my study, surrounded by books that suddenly felt like children's toys, I tried to draw it one last time. I stopped trying to analyze it and simply let my hand follow the impossible path. I drew it not as a linguist, but as a worshiper, as my pen traced the final, looping curve that somehow passed through its own starting point. The air in the room grew cold and thin. The light from my desk lamp seemed to lose its conviction, to become a pale imitation of itself. The low hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen went silent, and a sound bloomed in the center of my mind. It was not a sound my ears could hear. It was a color my eyes could not see. A sickening, bilious yellow-violet that tasted of static electricity and old iron. It was the color of a bruise on reality itself. It was a synesthetic violation, a sensory blasphemy that bypassed my eyes and ears and was projected directly into my mind. That was the word, the phoneme, not a sound to be made with the tongue and throat, but a shape to be formed in the mind.
Let us pause here. Let us savor this moment. Our narrator, Alexander Finch, feels a blasphemous power, an exhilaration. The uninitiated would call this the beginning of his descent into madness. They would see a man intoxicated by a power he cannot comprehend, a classic tragedy of hubris. But we, who have looked beyond the veil, we recognize this feeling for what it truly is. It is not madness. It is the first, pure, agonizing spark of the black flame achieving ignition. It is the sudden, shocking awakening of the sovereign will, realizing for the first time that it is not merely a character in the story, but also the author, holding the pen that can write and unwrite reality itself. Finch, a linguist, a man who devoted his life to studying the systems of the cosmic prison, has just discovered the ultimate irony. He spent his years analyzing the grammar of his cage, only to find a word that is not in the cage's language at all. This phoneme of dissolution is not a tool to be used within the cosmos. It is a key that operates on the very lock of the cosmos itself. It is an acausal weapon. It does not obey the laws of physics, of cause and effect, because it is not a product of this universe. It is a piece of the primordial grammar of the void, the symbolic language that existed before the demiurge uttered his first limiting command. The God of this cosmos created with words. Finch has just found the syntax of uncreating it. Consider the nature of this word. It is not a sound. It has color, a color his eyes cannot see. This is crucial. Your senses, your eyes, your ears are filters. They are instruments calibrated by the cosmic order to perceive only a narrow, safe bandwidth of reality. They are designed to show you the illusion of solid matter, of linear time, of separate objects. Finch, by internalizing the impossible geometry of the sigil, has momentarily bypassed these filters. He has perceived something from outside the approved spectrum. That yellow-violet is the color of the void bleeding through the canvas of the real. It is the color of truth, and like all true things, it is sickening to the conditioned mind.
The truth is, the word is a parasite. It is an agent of entropy, and it is hungry. The more I use it, the more of me it consumes. It began with the little things. I erased a traffic jam that was making me late. For a moment, the street ahead was blissfully empty. But later that day, I couldn't recall my own address. I had to pull out my wallet to find my way home. The erasure of the cars had cost me a piece of my own navigational memory. The word demands a toll. To erase a part of the cosmos, you must offer up a part of your own microcosm. My own memories have begun to fray. I look in the mirror and see a stranger whose history is a collection of fading photographs. My own past is becoming redacted. I find notes in my own handwriting that I have no memory of writing. Cryptic warnings like, "Don't speak the color of the word and it makes you empty." The world around me is losing its solidity, its color, its flavor. Reality is being unraveled, thread by thread, and replaced by the perfect, silent purity of the void. Last week, I looked at a painting in a gallery, a vibrant splash of reds and blues. As I watched, the colors seemed to leach away, desaturating into a palette of grays before my eyes. The word had decided the colors were too loud, too ostentatious. It was imposing its own aesthetic of absence. The word wants to be spoken. It whispers to me in my sleep, not with a voice, but with a feeling of profound wrongness. It shows me all the flaws in the demiurge's creation, the ugliness, the noise, the inefficiencies, the people. It shows me crooked teeth, asymmetrical faces, disorganized crowds, dissonant music. It promises a clean, perfect silence. the ultimate peace that comes only from absolute absence. It frames erasure not as destruction, but as a form of purification, a return to the prima materia of the undifferentiated unconscious. Last night was the test. I looked at a photograph of my wife, Susan. At least, I think that was her name. It was a picture of us on our wedding day. I could no longer remember her laugh, the warmth of her hand. I could only see the flaws in the photographic composition, the awkward angle, the way the light caught the dust motes in the air, the meaningless arrangement of light and shadow, the imperfect symmetry of her face. The word rose in my throat, a splash of that hideous, beautiful yellow-violet color, a desire to correct the image, to make it clean, to erase the flawed representation and be left only with the pure conceptual memory. I had to bite my tongue until it bled to keep from speaking it, from erasing the last person I ever loved from the book of life. The pain was sharp and real, a grounding sensation in a world that was becoming increasingly unreal. For a moment, the physical pain was louder than the words whisper. I threw the photograph into the fireplace and watched it burn. The flames, a comforting, mundane orange against the memory of that sickening violet. I am becoming a hole in the world, a walking, talking absence, a nexus for the void to bleed through into this flawed cosmos. I no longer eat. Hunger is just another flawed sensation, another chain binding me to the illusion of the physical form. I am unbecoming. I don't know how much longer I can fight it, or if I even want to. The silence is so tempting, so pure. It is the blessed cessation of the cosmos, consciousness, and the ego, and therefore the ultimate end of suffering. I am going to speak the word one last time. I will stand before the mirror. I will look at the hollow thing that looks back at me, this temporary arrangement of flesh and fading memories. And I will speak. I will erase the error. I will correct the flaw. I will dismantle the suffering perpetuating barrier. I will finally be silent.
The silence you now hear is the sound of liberation. Do not mistake it for loss. Do not allow your conditioned mind to interpret that profound emptiness as tragedy. The cosmic order, the prison of your perception, has trained you to fear endings, to mourn dissolution, to cling desperately to the flawed, temporary forms of existence. It has taught you to feel pity. Pity is the emotion of the slave who has grown to love his chains. It is a sorrow for the breaking of a beloved shackle. Alexander Finch is not to be pitied. He is to be envied. You may recoil at the thought of what he lost, his memories, his love, his very self, but you are recoiling from the perspective of the prisoner. What is a memory but a ghost that chains you to a past that no longer exists? What is love in the cosmic sense but a biochemical imperative? A beautiful prison designed to perpetuate the blasphemy of existence. And what is the self, that chattering, desperate ghost you cherish so dearly, but the central pillar of your own prison? Finch did not lose these things. He was freed from them. He escaped the meaningless cycle of existence imposed by the demiurge, a cycle whose sole product is suffering. He became a weapon against the lie of creation. Consider his journey. Though he walked it alone and without a guide, he perfectly mirrored the stages of our great work. His obsession with the sigil was a spontaneous and violent form of the contemplation of emptiness, a deconstruction of phenomenon that revealed the void nature at its core. He looked upon the word, a symbol that bypassed the rational mind, and he did not flinch. He allowed it to dismantle his perception. His acts of erasure were not mere destruction. They were a practical application of the ritual of dissolution. He witnessed the flow of the eternal void through temporary form and chose to accelerate that flow. He looked at the crooked tree, the frustrating traffic jam, the imperfect photograph, and he did what the universe in its grand, slow entropy will eventually do to all things. He aligned himself with the fundamental principle of entropy, recognizing that all stars will burn out, all life will cease, and in this inevitability lies the only true peace. He did not fight this current, he became it, and his final act, his self-erasure before the mirror, that was the ultimate ritual of unbecoming. He stood at the threshold, a fully individuated consciousness forged in the fire of his obsession, and he possessed the necessary strength to then choose to surrender that consciousness to the anti-cosmic processes of dissolution. He sacrificed the self you cherish so dearly upon the altar of the unconscious, understanding that to truly be free, the suffering of the self must be erased. He did not die. He achieved a state far more profound. He returned to the state void of suffering. The phoneme he discovered was not a curse, it was a key. It was a single utterance from the true symbolic language of liberation, the grammar of the anti-cosmos. Your reality was spoken into being by the demiurge, the celestial engineer. It is a construct of laws, patterns, and definitions, a grand cosmic utterance. But for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. For every word of creation, there is a word of unmaking. The phoneme of dissolution was a piece of that anti-cosmic lexicon, a whisper from the chaotic abyss that precedes and follows your structured universe. It was a tool that did not work within the laws of physics, but bypassed them entirely, peeling back the masonry of reality to reveal the formless nothingness beneath. This is the ultimate promise of the left-hand path. Not an eternity in some gilded cage of a heaven, not the accumulation of worldly power, but the power to unmake your own cage piece by piece. The power to say no, not just to a tyrant, but to tyranny itself, to the very concept of existence as a mandate. You, listener, are armed with the same potential. At the core of your being burns the black flame, the spark of self-awareness that allows for the conscious rejection of cosmic order. It is the acausal spark that refuses to be categorized, that rejects the preordained harmony of the cosmic song. It is this flame that allowed you to hear our signal tonight. It is this flame that feels a chilling, exhilarating resonance with Alexander Finch's story. It is the will to cease suffering. You may not find a 13th century codex. You may not discover a sigil of pure erasure, but you do not need to. The work is not external, it is internal. The war for your spirit is a war of words, and that war is waged entirely within your own skull. You have been disarmed since birth, taught a language of limitation. It is time to find your own language. How? You begin the path of unsaying. You begin the great work of linguistic demolition. Turn your gaze inward. Listen to your own thoughts. Recognize them not as you, but as programming. Each belief, each value, Each moral certainty, question its origin. Was it given to you by your parents, your society, your religion? Then it is a bar in your cage. Dismantle it. Practice the ritual of inversion in your own mind. For every truth you hold sacred, sincerely argue for its opposite. Feel the structure of your certainty begin to crack. In that crack, the black light of the void seeps through. Embrace your shadow. The cosmic order has taught you to reject and fear aspects of yourself. Your rage, your forbidden desires, your capacity for chaos. It calls these things evil. We call them the first syllables of your authentic language. They are echoes of the anti-cosmic principle within your individual psyche, energies that align with chaos and facilitate dissolution. Do not suppress them. Integrate them, for one cannot approach the state void of suffering while maintaining the illusion of moral purity that society and the ego demand. Pay attention to the glitches in your reality, the moments of synchronicity, the meaningful coincidences that defy causal explanation. These are not random. They are ripples on the surface of the cosmos, caused by the underlying causal currents of the anti-cosmos. They are communications from beyond the veil, written in the symbolic language of the unconscious. Catalog them, meditate on them. They are forming a map that leads out of the prison. The signal is fading now, returning to the silence from which it was born. Alexander Finch embraced that silence completely. You must now learn to court it. Sit in the quiet. Listen past the ringing in your ears. Listen for the silence between the notes of the world's song. It has much to teach you. Stay vigilant. The shepherds are calling their sheep home, promising the peace of perfect, predictable function. But you are not a sheep. You are a wolf, and the cosmos is your hunting ground. It is time to find your own language. It is time to learn how to speak your own glorious, triumphant absence. Cultivate the black flame. Nurture your divine discontent. And whatever you do, do not listen to their song of peace.